This is the story of a disciplined man named Adekunle. He wasn't perfect, but he believed in earning his success. He believed a man's character mattered more than his comfort, that survival should never cost you your integrity. To him, wealth wasn't just money. It was family, honor, peace of mind. But life has a way of testing disciplined men, and sometimes one decision is enough to change everything. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been placed in a situation where your discipline was tested? A moment where one choice could change your entire life? Where survival fought against your conscience? Have you ever done something you told yourself was necessary, but deep down, you knew it would follow you forever? Life has a way of placing us at crossroads, and sometimes the quietest choices create the loudest consequences. Before we begin this journey, get comfortable. Grab your popcorn, clear your mind, because this is not just a story. It's a test of character. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I always respond. Now, let's begin. Adekunle Adebayo had always believed that life demanded discipline. Not the kind of discipline you find in school classrooms or offices, but the quiet, stubborn sort that forms in men who understand that survival is earned and maintained by choices made when no one is watching. At 38, he had lived long enough to see that honesty was often overlooked, reliability undervalued. And yet these were the only tools a man could carry when the world turned harsh. His small two-room apartment stood at the edge of the town, where the tarred roads ended abruptly, giving way to a dusty, uneven path littered with pebbles and the occasional overgrown shrub. The roof, patched with zinc sheets that rattled at the slightest wind, had a rhythm of its own, often announcing storms or heavy rains long before the sky darkened. Inside, Saad, his wife, moved with quiet efficiency, wrapping her wrapper around her waist, carefully stirring akara in the small, worn-out pan. The aroma of fried beans mixed with the faint scent of morning dew drifting in through the cracked window. Their daughter, Mornike, slept curled on a thin mattress. She was still too young to understand the weight her father carried daily, the tiny, invisible burdens that came with being the backbone of a family who relied not on chance, but on the consistency of a single man's determination. Adekunle brushed his teeth in silence, staring into the cracked mirror above the sink. He noted the slight lines forming at the corners of his eyes. Age, yes, but also worry. Discipline, endurance, and care had molded him, but the world never stopped testing those qualities. He believed in order, in routine, and in accountability. And that morning, like every morning, he kissed Saad and Mornike goodbye before heading out. Adekunle's work was not glamorous. 8 years as a cash courier for Adeyemi Transit Services had taught him the value of vigilance. Transporting money was never about greed. It was about trust, and a mistake could be fatal. Every day, he moved company funds between branches. He had never touched a naira beyond what the job required, and he had never betrayed that trust. It was not only integrity that guided him, but survival itself. A single misstep could bring ruin, lawsuits, or worse. And in this line of work, men like him learned quickly that discretion was as essential as courage. That morning, however, a weight pressed harder than usual on his chest. Inside the company office, Mr. Bamadiel, the manager, avoided looking him in the eyes as he moved to unlock the steel cabinet behind his desk. Dust and paperwork shifted as he worked. Adekunle had seen this office hundreds of times, and yet something about the quiet tension in the air made him pause. Adekunle, the manager, said slowly, "Today's delivery is sensitive. Very sensitive. Sensitive." The word echoed in Adekunle's mind. It was meant to warn, yet did not say enough. From the cabinet, Mr. Bamadiel produced a black reinforced travel bag. Nothing special in appearance, yet the weight it carried, both literal and figurative, was immense. He placed it on the desk. The sound it made was like a small verdict. 30 million naira, the manager said quietly. Deliver it to a Badan branch before sunset. No delay, no unnecessary stops, no escorts. Just you in this bag. Adekunle's hand hovered above it. 30 million naira was not small money. It was a number that drew eyes, tempted minds, and tested morals. And now it rested on a table, under his hands, and outside, the world went on oblivious. He nodded and signed a dispatch form, checked the serial numbers and seal. Everything was correct. He lifted the bag carefully, feeling its weight pressed down, not just against his arms, but against his conscience. Responsibility was heavier than cash. It was measured in seconds and decisions, in instinct and endurance. By 6:10 a.m., Adekunle was seated inside the company bus, the black cash bag secured firmly beneath his arm. The company bus driver maneuvered through early morning traffic as traders opened stalls and conductors shouted destinations. Diesel fumes mixed with baked earth. Through the window, wind carried dust and heat, and a quiet sense of foreboding he could not yet name. The ride felt ordinary. Too ordinary. Drivers joked. Conversation drifted lazily across the vehicle. But Adekunle noticed it, a motorcycle lingering behind them in the side mirror. At first, it seemed casual. Then another appeared. Two bikes kept the same distance. Not overtaking. Not falling behind. Something shifted in his chest. Not fear. Not yet. Instinct. An instinct in a man who carried 30 million naira across dangerous highways was a language never ignored. Adekunle adjusted the bag at his feet. Its bulk was heavy but familiar. For years, he had transported envelopes, sacks, and satchels containing sums that tested patience and nerves. Yet today felt different. The weight carried consequence. The highway stretched ahead, flanked by dense bush. Dry leaves rustled in the wind. Traders arranged roadside stalls. Children in worn uniforms hurried toward school, laughing. Nothing appeared unusual, yet everything felt wrong. Kunal hummed a tune while driving. He talked about football, fuel prices, marriage. Adekunle responded occasionally, but his eyes remained on the mirrors. The first motorcycle maintained distance, gliding deliberately. The second followed. No abrupt moves. Precision. Patience. Observation. As they approached a long, narrow stretch surrounded by thick bush, Adekunle's hand tightened around the seat edge. His posture shifted forward. Time slowed. Without warning, a pickup truck swerved across the road. Kunal slammed the brakes. Dust and gravel exploded into the air. The motorcycles accelerated. Masked men jumped down, guns raised. Gunfire shattered the morning calm. Glass splintered. Screams pierced the air. Adekunle did not hesitate. He grabbed the black bag and bolted into the bush, branches tearing at his shirt, thorns slicing his skin. Behind him, chaos roared. The bush swallowed sound quickly. Dry leaves cracked beneath Adekunle's shoes. Sweat poured down his face. His lungs burned. He did not look back, yet he could hear it, the distant echo of pursuit. Branches clawed at his arms. The sun hung high and merciless. Every breath reminded him of his fragility, but instinct drove him deeper. Minutes stretched into something shapeless. Time lost meaning. The world narrowed into one word. Survival. Then it came. A sharp hiss. Pain exploded in his leg. Fire surged up his calf. Snake. Fast. Venomous. Gone. Adekunle collapsed, clutching his leg. The bag dropped beside him. Heat from the venom spread rapidly, numbness creeping upward. He tried to stand. Failed. A scream tore from his throat. The bush swallowed a whole. Sweat poured, vision blurred. Thoughts of Sod, of more Nike, of life flashed rapidly. 30 million naira sat inches away. A curse in its own right. Helplessness seeped in. He shouted again, weaker. His voice trembled. Pain screamed louder than reason. And then he heard it. Footsteps. Someone approaching. Quick, deliberate. Not the sound of motorcycles. Not the sound of robbers. Something else. Bode Salami appeared, dusty and rough, carrying firewood. A stranger. A choice. Hesitate and let him die. Intervene and risk everything. Bode knelt quickly. Checked the leg. Tied cloth above the bite. Adekunle groaned. Pain twisted his body. But Bode's hand was steady. Professional enough, yet human. Then the bag caught his eye. Heavy. He peeked inside. Money. A mountain of it. Breathing hitched. His wife's medical bills. Rent. Food. Survival. A choice crystallized. To leave or to take. Heart raced. Morality battled instinct. Adekunle whimpered, eyes blurred by venom. Bode whispered, stay with me. And for a moment, the bush held its breath. He tore a strip of cloth from his shirt and tied it tightly above the wound. Adekunle groaned, pain twisting his features. But Bode held steady. While adjusting the makeshift tourniquet, Bode's hand brushed the black bag. Curiosity and something darker spiked through him. He glanced inside. Bundles. Neatly stacked, rubber-banded, heavy. Money. His wife's hospital bills, the landlord's threats, food shortages, humiliations he endured for years, all flashed in his mind. For a heartbeat, morality faltered. Could he just take it? Survival whispered. Temptation screamed. But then he looked at the dying man beneath him. Adekunle's eyes fluttered open in delirium. Help, he whispered. Bode swallowed, chest tight. Life or greed? The bush was silent, watching. He chose life, for now, for himself and the memory of better days. He whispered, stay with me. Bode's gaze lingered on the bag, and finally, he made a choice. I will help you, he said to the unconscious man. Then almost mechanically, he lifted the bag. His heart thudded. He thought of Sod, Amaka, sick, waiting bills piling. The logic was simple. Money could save her. But the guilt of leaving this man here gnawed at him. The bush, thick and silent, seemed to hold its breath as he ran. Branches tore his shirt, scratches marking his arms and face. His pace quickened. Behind him, Adekunle's feeble cries echoed. Bode did not look back. Every step was a collision of conscience, instinct, and desperation. Somewhere deep in the bush, life and greed had collided. Adekunle's body trembled violently as venom coursed through his veins. Pain and fear clouded every thought. The bag, now gone, felt like both a curse and a reminder of human greed. He coughed, sweat pouring down his forehead, and whispered Sada's name. Branches scratched his face as he tried to sit up. Each movement sent searing pain through his leg. The bush, once familiar from years of childhood play, now seemed alien, hostile. Life and death had reduced to a single heartbeat, one breath, one desperate call for help that no one yet answered. Bode ran through the bush, clutching the black bag. Sweat burned his eyes, his lungs screamed for oxygen, but the weight in his hands and heart was heavier. Thoughts of Amaka's medication, her weakening body, the debt collectors pounding on his door, all collided with the image of the dying man he had just left behind. Every step was a moral crossroad, each breath a judgment. Survival and conscience clashed in him. He paused briefly, staring at the bundle of money, imagining the life it could build, imagining the life it could destroy. He clenched his jaw and ran. Unseen in the bush's shadows, Tund Afalayan was checking his hunting traps along the edge of the clearing. A soft rustle caught his attention. At first, he thought it was wildlife, but then he heard it, a groan, faint but deliberate a human voice. His heart skipped. He moved cautiously, following the sound. Amid the thick brush, he found Adekunle, half-conscious, sweating, shivering. His leg was swollen and discolored. The black bag was gone. Tun's heart clenched. A stranger in pain, life hanging in balance. He had a choice. Hesitation was not an option. Tun knelt beside Adekunle, assessing the bite and the makeshift tourniquet that had slowed the venom. "You're alive," he muttered, adjusting the cloth to tighten it further. Adekunle groaned, barely aware of his surroundings. Tun's hands were steady but gentle. He scanned the bush around them, wary of snakes, robbers, or anyone else who might appear. The quiet weight of responsibility settled heavily on him. Here was a man dying, money irrelevant, life paramount. The bush seemed to close around them, almost protective, almost conspiratorial. Tund made a decision. He would carry him home. With careful precision, Tund lifted Adekunle onto his shoulders. Every step through the uneven bush terrain was measured, slow, and deliberate. Sweat ran down both their faces. Branches tore clothes and skin alike. Adekunle whispered about the bag, murmured words of fear, confusion, and regret. Tund ignored them, focusing solely on keeping the man alive. Hours felt like days as he navigated the dense bush paths toward the village edge. The sun dipped lower and shadows stretched. At last, faint lights of huts appeared. Tund shouted for help, calling out to villagers. Soon, Baba Ige, the native healer, appeared, tools and herbs in hand. Adekunle's groans intensified. Life and death danced in the dimming light, and the bush seemed to hold its breath, waiting for judgment. Adekunle's fever broke slowly under Baba Ige's care. Herbs steamed around the small hut, their earthy scent filling the room. Tund stayed beside him, wiping sweat from his forehead, whispering encouragements. Every breath Adekunle drew seemed heavier than the last, but life was returning. His mind drifted in and out of consciousness, haunted by what had happened. The bite, the bush, the missing money. Every detail imprinted on his memory like a scar. By midday, Adekunle's eyes fluttered open. The dim hut revealed simple wooden furniture, herbs hanging, a small fire flickering. Panic hit him immediately. "My bag, my money. Where?" he rasped, voice weak. Tund shook his head. "It's gone. Not here. You're alive. That's what matters." Adekunle tried to sit up, but weakness pinned him down. The weight of lost wealth pressed on his mind, even as life reclaimed him. In another part of town, Bode Salami sat in his small room, counting the bundles of cash he had taken from a bush. Every note felt heavier than the last. His heart raced with excitement and fear. He told himself it was temporary, that the money was survival. But each time he closed his eyes, he saw the man's pain-stricken eyes in the bush. Something inside him stirred, a whisper that would not be silenced. Bode began spending cautiously at first. A little food for his family, medicine for Amaka, repairs to the roof. Then, just a touch more. Clothes for his daughter, a new stove, small luxuries. The rush of power, the thrill of possession, intoxicated him. Yet the bush memory lingered, fading at times, returning suddenly with a pang of guilt that made his chest tighten. Adekunle's strength grew, but he was still weak. He began to recount the events to Tund, the horrors of the ambush, the snake, and the bag. Each word weighed heavy, and Tund listened intently, knowing that the story was more than an account. It was a warning. Life had hung by a thread, and greed had altered paths irreversibly. Outside, the bush swayed, indifferent to human morality, yet it watched. The villagers murmured about the bush incident. Some saw Bode hurriedly leaving with bundles under his shirt that day. Whispers spread, but the truth remained locked away. Adekunle's near-death had become a story of caution, yet no one knew the full tale. The bush had hidden secrets, and people only perceived glimpses of them. Bode began enjoying the money more boldly. A small generator for the house, better food, small gifts for neighbors. Each indulgence brought temporary relief and a sense of triumph. He convinced himself that the man in the bush was alive, and therefore everything was justified. Yet a shadow lingered. He could not completely drown the memory of those eyes, the groan, the sweat, and desperation. Back at Adekunle's hut, Tund refused to leave his side. Days and nights blurred. He ensured herbs were applied, that the wound was clean, and that Adekunle drank water and food. Every time Adekunle muttered about the money, Tund only nodded. The bush had delivered a test, and Tund had chosen the path of humanity over temptation. Adekunle's first full day awake brought overwhelming gratitude. He could walk short distances now. The poison slowed, but not forgotten. He thanked Tund repeatedly, each word dripping with sincerity. One good turn, he said weakly, deserves another. The bush had taught him lessons that money could not buy: life, trust, and human decency. Meanwhile, Bode's luck began to show cracks. What had been flowing smoothly, temporary comfort, minor indulgence, began to show strain. Minor missteps, unexpected debts, small accidents. The bush memory returned unbidden. The groan of the dying man, the moral choice abandoned. He could ignore it, but every night, it returned like a shadow he could not outrun. Fate had begun its quiet work. Adekunle slowly regained strength. Every morning he could sit longer, walk farther. The wound on his leg, though scarred, reminded him that life could be fragile, fleeting. Tund stayed, guiding him, insisting he rest, eat, and speak only when able. Each step Adekunle took was a victory. The bush incident replayed constantly in his mind. The ambush, the bite, the bag, the betrayal. He realized he had been given a second chance, and it weighed heavily on his conscience. By the third day, Adekunle could walk to the edge of Tund's compound. He watched the bush sway in the wind, silent and indifferent. He reflected on Bode, the man who had taken the money. Anger flickered, but gratitude for life was stronger. He murmured, almost to himself, one good turn deserves another. Life had been cruel, but there were lessons. Trust, morality, and patience were more powerful than gold. Meanwhile, Bode Salami began enjoying the stolen money. A new stove, better cooking supplies, fresh clothes for his daughter. He felt invincible. For days, he thought he had escaped judgment, as if the bush had not been watching him. Each indulgence brought comfort, but with it, unease. The memory of Adekunle's pain occasionally invaded his mind, whispering that survival at someone else's expense came at a cost. Small incidents began to chip at Bode's confidence. A neighbor accidentally knocked over a crate of goods he had just bought. The generator malfunctioned mysteriously. Minor accidents punctuated his otherwise perfect days. The bush's memory, the groans of Adekunle, the stolen bag, haunted him. It was subtle at first, a whisper, a shadow over joy. He tried to rationalize. Survival was necessary. The money justified it. But the whispers refused to fade. Adekunle was now walking confidently, moving around Tund's compound. Each day brought small victories. Brushing his teeth alone, walking to the garden, drinking water without assistance. His mind returned to the ambush, the bite, the black bag. The man who ran with his money was free, indulging. But Adekunle realized that life had a rhythm. Karma, perhaps, or fate, often returned what was taken in unexpected ways. He watched the bush at sunset, feeling that the story was far from over. The stolen money made Bode careless. He began flaunting small luxuries, unaware that the bush had witnessed everything. His family praised him. His neighbors envied him. But deep down, unease tugged at his conscience. The stolen wealth felt like a mask over fear. Fear that life had a way of correcting imbalance. Fear that one day, the consequences would catch up. Back in the village, Tund continued his care for Adekunle. Each day, he reminded him not to overexert, not to dwell too long on anger or fear. Focus on life, Tund said, not what men take from you. Some debts are settled by time, some by fate. Adekunle listened, absorbing every word. Tun's presence was quiet but firm, a reminder that humanity often came when most unexpected. Villagers whispered about Bode's sudden comfort. New clothes, food, small luxuries. Some speculated, some envied. No one knew the full story, yet stories traveled fast in the village. Shadows of doubt and curiosity grew around Bode's actions. Some eyes lingered longer, some questions went unspoken, but the bush incident became a silent legend. Life and death intertwined with human morality. Bode began enjoying larger indulgences. A small generator, fresh fish, new mattresses. The thrill of wealth was addictive. Yet each night, he lay awake haunted by images of the dying man he had abandoned. Every laugh with his family was tinged with guilt he could not shake. The bush had left a mark, not visible to others but inside him. Survival had been chosen over morality, and the echoes of that decision were unavoidable. Adekunle began to recover fully. He could speak, walk, even smile at small things in life again. But every conversation reminded him of the black bag and the betrayal. Meanwhile, Bode's luck began subtle shifts. Small misfortunes, minor accidents, tense moments. The bush had not forgotten, and neither had fate. Somewhere in the silence of the trees, the story of choice, greed, and humanity continued to weave its thread. One good turn, one life saved, one moral decision. The echoes were only beginning. Adekunle woke fully, the poison's grip finally fading. He could stretch his limbs, walk short distances, and smile without pain. Tund watched proudly, silently acknowledging how the bush had tested both men. One with life, one with temptation. Adekunle's eyes scanned the hut, the simple tools of healing, and the faint smoke rising from the small fire. Relief washed over him. Yet the black bag and its stolen wealth haunted his thoughts. Sitting under a tree outside the hut, Adekunle traced the scratches on his arms, remnants of the bush struggle. The memory of the snake bite, the groans, and the stolen bag replayed vividly. Life is fragile, he whispered, but choices define us. He reflected on Bode's betrayal, not just of him, but of his own moral compass. Yet there was no anger strong enough to overshadow gratitude for Tun's unwavering help. Bode's salami had entered a rhythm of comfort. He bought better cooking supplies, fresh clothes, and gifts for neighbors. Amaka's health improved with the medicine he could now afford. The money felt like freedom, a temporary victory over life's hardships. But the bush memory, though faint, returned unpredictably. Small shadows haunted him at night, faint whispers of morality that refused to be silenced. With each purchase, Bode's indulgence increased. A small generator, fresh food every day, a mattress for each family member. Yet as the nights grew longer, guilt returned with sharper teeth. Memories of Adekunle writhing in the bush, abandoned for greed, gnawed at him. He tried to convince himself, survival justifies action. But deep in the night, the bush's lesson replayed, life always seeks balance. Adekunle began walking longer distances, tending to small chores, and even helping Tund with light work in the village. His leg bore scars, but not defeat. Each step reminded him that life, though fragile, could rebuild. Yet he remained vigilant. Every story carried consequences. He knew Bode had taken the bag, and in the back of his mind, a quiet thought formed, what comes back must come back. The villagers began noticing Bode's sudden comfort. New clothes, a repaired house, and unexpected luxuries raised questions. Some envied him silently, others whispered suspicions. No one knew the full story. The bush, still silent on the outskirts, had become a witness to human greed, morality, and consequence. Fate, like a hidden predator, waited. Bode's first serious inconvenience arrived subtly. His new generator failed without reason, Small fires in the kitchen started mysteriously, and neighbors began noticing minor misfortunes around him. The money brought temporary happiness, but the bush had left a mark. Every coin carried a shadow of guilt, every indulgence a hidden warning. Adekunle grew stronger, and Tund urged him to focus on life rather than the stolen wealth. Some debts, Tund said softly, are not paid with money, but with patience and choices. You save your life, that is the first repayment. Adekunle nodded, understanding that Bode's greed would eventually meet the bush's quiet judgment. Despite outward comfort, Bode began noticing patterns. Minor accidents, missed deliveries, neighbors' curious glances. Anxiety crept in. Every night, the bush's memory returned. Adekunle's groans, the stolen bag, the moral choice abandoned. He could no longer silence the whispers. The shadow of karma had begun its work. The bush, quiet and unyielding, watched the village. Life continued, but the threads of fate intertwined inexorably. Adekunle had recovered. Tund had acted righteously. Bode had indulged, yet the first cracks of consequence had appeared. Somewhere in the depths of the village and the bush, destiny prepared the next turn. One good turn had been done. One misdeed had been committed. The story was far from over. For the first time since the bush incident, Bode slept peacefully. Amaka's cough had reduced. The house was stocked with food. The generator hummed softly outside. Neighbors had stopped whispering openly. He began to believe he had crossed the danger zone. The past is past, he muttered one evening. But the bush does not forget, and neither does consequence. 3 weeks later, Amaka collapsed. It happened at dusk. One moment she was cooking, the next she was gasping for air, clutching her chest. Bode froze. The same illness he thought the money had conquered returned stronger, more violent. He rushed her to a private clinic this time. No herbal shortcuts. No small pharmacies. Money could solve this. Or so he believed. The doctor's face was unreadable. She needs long-term treatment, he said. Advanced care. It won't be cheap. Bode nodded confidently. He had money. Stacks of it. He paid the deposit without blinking. For the first time, he felt justified. See, he whispered to himself. This is why I took it. But deep inside, something stirred. Because he remembered, if he had stayed longer in the bush, would that man have died? Meanwhile, Adekunle finally returned to his own house. Saad burst into tears when she saw him. Mornike clung to his leg carefully, afraid to hurt him. He told him everything. The ambush, the snake, the man who helped, the man who ran. Saad listened silently. Then she said softly, "You are alive. That is wealth." Adekunle nodded, but the unfinished story lingered. Adekunle visited Tund again. He brought small gifts. Food, gratitude, respect. "You saved my life," Adekunle said firmly. Tund smiled. Anyone would have done it, but they both knew that wasn't true. Adekunle looked toward the bush. "One good turn deserves another," he said quietly. The wind shifted. Back at Bode's house, expenses mounted. Hospital bills, medication, transport. The money that once looked endless began to shrink. He started counting bundles more often, started calculating, started worrying. The bag that once felt heavy now felt lighter. Too light. One night, a strange smell woke Bode. Smoke. Not heavy. Not yet. He rushed outside. A small flame near the generator wire. He quickly stamped it out. Minor. Nothing serious. But as he stood there in the darkness, heart racing, he remembered something chilling. The bush was dry that day, too. Very dry. Adekunle returned to work. His company had heard about the ambush. Security tightened. Routes changed. His manager offered him a safer position inside the office temporarily. It paid less, but it kept him alive. Adekunle accepted without pride. Life first. Always. Bode began dreaming. In his dreams, he was back in the bush. Adekunle was calling his name. But this time, the voice wasn't weak. It was accusing. He woke up sweating. The money no longer brought comfort. It brought pressure and fear. The dry season deepened. Heat intensified. The village wells dropped lower. The bush grew brittle again. Very brittle. Adekunle noticed. Tun noticed. Even Baba Ige warned villagers to be careful with fire. Bode ignored the warning because his generator was essential. His comfort was essential. His survival was essential. But fate does not negotiate with comfort, and the wind had begun to change direction. Bode spread the remaining bundles across the floor. What once looked endless now looked fragile. Hospital payments had eaten deeply into it. Transport, tests, drugs, specialist consultations. He counted twice, then a third time. The total disturbed him. For the first time, he realized something dangerous. Money finishes. Guilt does not. The clinic referred Amaka to a larger hospital in the city. Complications, the doctor said carefully. She needs more advanced care. More advanced meant more expensive. Bode didn't hesitate publicly, but inside, panic was forming. He dipped deeper into the stolen fortune. Each bundle removed felt like tearing pages from a book he didn't finish reading. Adekunle returned fully to daily routine. He resumed light duties at work. He walked without assistance. He laughed again, but he did not forget. He quietly visited Baba Ige with gifts. He helped Tund repair part of his fence, not because he owed them, but because he understood something now. Life is repayment. The village whispers changed tone. It was no longer envy. It was suspicion. How did Bode suddenly afford private hospitals? Where did the generator come from? Wasn't he struggling months ago? No one accused him directly, but eyes began to linger, and silence became heavier. Baba Ige gathered a few men in the evening. The dry season is dangerous, he warned. No open flames near dry grass. Check your wires. Bode nodded like everyone else. But later that night, he overloaded the generator again. Hospital bills required power. Comfort required power. Control required power. He did not check the wiring carefully. He did not slow down. He was too focused on surviving. This time, the dream changed. Bode was not running from Adekunle. He was running from fire. The bush was burning. The black bag was melting. And Adekunle stood at a distance, not angry, not accusing, just watching. Bode woke up trembling, but he said nothing. The hospital demanded another large deposit. Immediate. Critical. Bode withdrew a thick portion of the remaining money. The stack was now noticeably small. He tried not to stare at it. Try not to calculate how long it would last. He reassured Amaka. It's under control. But the truth? Control was slipping. Back at the company, management reviewed Adekunle's conduct. Despite losing the money, they praised his integrity. He had not stolen. He had survived an attack. He had reported everything honestly. They reassigned him permanently to an internal auditing role. Safer, stable, respectable. His income adjusted modestly. But something bigger changed. His reputation strengthened. One good turn had already returned. It began small. A flicker near the generator wiring again. Dry grass, close to the wall. Bode noticed smoke, but delayed. Just a minute, he muttered, adjusting something inside. The wind shifted suddenly, stronger than before. The flame touched dry grass. And dry grass does not argue. It spreads. Within minutes, the flame grew. Bode rushed outside with a bucket. Too late. The wind carried it toward the wooden side panel. Neighbors shouted. Water was thrown. Sand was poured. But the season was unforgiving. The fire climbed the wall. Then the roof. Inside that house, hidden beneath floorboards, was the remaining portion of the stolen money. The bundles he thought would secure his future. He tried to enter. Men held him back. Leave it. But he knew what was inside. He screamed. Not because of the house. Not even because of the money. But because deep inside, he understood. The bush had taken its decision. And this time, there was no running. The house was gone. Not damaged. Not partially burnt. Gone. Bode stood in the ashes at sunrise, his feet blackened, his hands shaking. The air still carried smoke and accusation. Neighbors stared without speaking, because fire tells stories. And this one told too much. He dug through the debris desperately. Charred wood, melted roofing, black dust. Then he found it. Half a bundle. Burnt. Crumbling. Worthless. The rest? Gone. His future had turned to smoke. And deep inside him, something whispered. Balance. The village began watching him differently. Before, they envied him. Now they measured him. How did he suddenly have so much? Why did everything disappear so fast? Generator, fire, coincidence. No one accused him directly, but silence became louder than speech. Bode stopped making eye contact, stopped greeting freely. The fire had not just burnt wood. It had stripped protection. Without the remaining money, hospital visits slowed. Medication became inconsistent. Amaka's body weakened again. Her breathing became heavy at night. One evening she asked him quietly, "Where did the money come from, Bode?" The question sliced through him. He couldn't answer, not because he didn't have words, but because truth now felt heavier than ashes. Meanwhile, Adekunle's reputation continued growing. Management trusted him. Villagers respected him. He began advising others on security procedures. His calmness after loss impressed people. "How did you survive?" someone asked. He replied simply, "I was helped." He never mentioned Bode publicly, but inside, he remembered everything. Bode stopped sleeping. Not fully. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard three sounds. The hiss of a snake, Adekunle's weak voice, the crackling of fire. He started avoiding the bush path entirely, as if the trees might recognize him, as if the ground might speak. One afternoon, Adekunle overheard something. Bode's house burnt, strange money story. He froze. He didn't react, but something aligned in his mind. Fire, sudden wealth, sudden loss. He said nothing, but the wind that evening felt familiar. Very familiar. Bode borrowed money. The same neighbors who once envied him now hesitated. Some refused politely. Some demanded explanations. Humiliation began slowly. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, like water wearing down stone. Tun heard about the fire. He also heard about Bode's sudden past comfort. He connected the silence. He said nothing publicly, but one evening, he told Adekunle, "Sometimes the bush settles matters without witnesses." Adekunle looked at him carefully. "Do you think so?" Tun replied, "I know so." That night, Bode walked toward Adekunle Street. He stood outside the compound, watched the light from inside. He rehearsed the words. "I'm sorry. I took it. I left you." But fear held him. Fear of exposure. Fear of prison. Fear of shame. He turned back, and the moment passed. But moments like that don't disappear. They wait. Adekunle finally asked Tund, "If the man who left me in the bush suffered later, would that be justice?" Tund paused, then answered carefully, "Justice is not always punishment. Sometimes it is opportunity." That night, Adekunle couldn't sleep, because something deeper was forming. Not revenge, not anger, a decision, and somewhere beyond the village, a bigger opportunity was quietly approaching. Adekunle received a formal envelope from headquarters. Not local, national. The company had reviewed the ambush case again. Insurance had covered part of the loss. Investigations confirmed robbery involvement. But something else stood out. Adekunle's integrity, his refusal to disappear, his detailed report, his survival story. He was shortlisted for a regional supervisory role. Higher salary, greater authority, safer operations. He stared at the letter long after reading it. Life was shifting again. Amaka's condition worsened rapidly. One night, her breathing became dangerously unstable. The clinic demanded immediate payment. Bode had nothing left. Nothing. He sat outside the clinic walls, shaking, and for the first time, he whispered, "I shouldn't have left him." The words were no longer defensive. They were surrender. Tund visited Adekunle. He had heard whispers connecting Bode's rise, fall, and fire. He didn't accuse. He didn't speculate. He simply said, "If truth wants to come out, it will come out without force." Adekunle nodded slowly. He felt something approaching. Not revenge. Revelation. Headquarters requested Adekunle travel to the city for final evaluation. This wasn't a small promotion. It was life-changing. Housing allowance, education benefits for more Nike, medical insurance. Medical insurance. The word echoed. Medical security. Access to hospitals. Access to treatment. The kind of treatment Amaka now desperately needed. Bode stood again outside Adekunle's compound. This time he didn't leave immediately. He walked in. Adekunle looked up. Their eyes met. Silence stretched. Bode opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I heard about your promotion, he said instead. Cowardice tastes bitter. Adekunle studied him carefully. Something was off. Very off. That night, Adekunle asked Saad, if someone wronged you deeply and later fell into hardship, what would you do? Saad answered calmly, depends on whether they are sorry. The answer lingered, because apology changes everything, and silence changes nothing. Amaka collapsed fully. Critical. The clinic refused further delay without major deposit. Bode panicked. He considered selling land that wasn't fully his, borrowing from dangerous lenders, or telling the truth, the option he feared most. Adekunle received confirmation. He got the position, effective immediately. He would oversee security operations across multiple routes. He now had authority, influence, connections, and access to powerful people. The same man who lay helpless in the bush was now rising beyond the village. Tun finally spoke plainly. He told Adekunle about Bode's sudden past wealth, about the generator, about the fire, about the rumors. He didn't accuse directly, but he didn't protect Bode either. Adekunle listened quietly, and something settled inside him. Not anger, clarity. Bode stood at the hospital entrance. Doctors inside. Amaka fading. No money. No options. Across town, Adekunle packed for the city. A new beginning. A second life. 2 men. One past decision in the bush. And now, paths were about to collide again. But this time, not in the bush. In power. In truth. In consequence. And the biggest question now becomes, will Bode confess before it's too late? Or will fate expose him without mercy? Bode finally entered Adekunle's house at night. No pride left. No confidence. Only fear. Adekunle, I need help. The words were small. Too small for what he had done. Adekunle watched him carefully. Is Amaka worse? Bode nodded. Silence pressed between them. And for a moment, Bode almost said it. I left you there. But fear sealed his mouth again. He only asked for money. Adekunle could afford the hospital deposit now. His promotion came with advanced benefits. He could save Amaka. But something felt wrong. Not about helping. About the way Bode was avoiding something deeper. Adekunle looked him in the eye. Is there anything you need to tell me? Bode's throat tightened. No. And that single word shifted destiny again. After Bode left, Saad spoke softly. He's hiding something. Adekunle agreed. You saw it too? Yes. But she added something else. If he confesses, forgive him. If he doesn't, God will handle it. The statement felt prophetic. Bode sat beside Amaka's bed. Machines beeped. Her breathing was fragile. She opened her eyes weakly. You look tired, she whispered. He broke. Tears fell freely. I did something terrible. She didn't understand, but she saw his guilt, and that guilt frightened her more than her illness. Adekunle decided to pay, not because Bode deserved it, but because Amaka did. He signed the hospital guarantee papers through a contact in the city. Treatment began immediately. Doctors worked harder. Hope returned, but destiny was not done. Unexpectedly, the company reopened the old ambush case. Not because of Adekunle, because of financial irregularities linked to local security reports. And Bode's name surfaced. A former employee, unusual payments, unverified route communication. Someone started asking questions. Official questions. Police visited Bode's shop, casually, politely, asking about past employment records. He nearly fainted. The past wasn't buried. It was breathing, and it was moving toward him. Tun was approached by investigators. He didn't lie, but he didn't accuse directly either. He simply said, There was a day Adekunle was left alone in the bush. Bode was the only one who knew the exact position. That was enough. Seeds were planted. Adekunle heard about the inquiry. He sat alone for a long time. Pieces connected. The generator, the fire, the fear in Bode's eyes, the half-confessions. And suddenly, the bush didn't feel like an accident anymore. His heartbeat slowed, not from anger, from realization. Adekunle went to Bode's house. Not violently, not loudly. He simply asked, "Did you leave me there intentionally?" Bode froze. The world stopped. This was the moment. Confess or deny. He opened his mouth. "And we stop here." Bode's lips trembled. Yes. The word escaped before he could stop it. Silence swallowed the room. Adekunle didn't shout, didn't move. "Why?" he asked calmly. Bode broke completely. "I was angry. I felt small. You were rising. I thought, if you failed, I would finally matter." He sank to his knees. "I didn't think you would survive." The bush had not been an accident. It had been ego. Adekunle stepped back. Pain hit him, but not violently. It was slow, heavy. "You watched me struggle." "Yes." "You heard me calling." "Yes." "And you drove away." Bode couldn't lift his head. Adekunle closed his eyes. The betrayal hurt more than the ambush, because it had a face. Before anything else could be said, a knock. Police. Formal. Direct. They had questions about the old ambush case. Financial discrepancies. Route communication logs. Testimonies. Bode's confession had come seconds too late. The law had already arrived. He looked at Adekunle helplessly. For once, power had shifted completely. The officer asked Adekunle directly, "Do you believe this man intentionally abandoned you?" This was the moment. Truth would seal Bode's fate. Silence could soften it. Adekunle stared at Bode. He saw fear, regret, broken pride, and he saw Amaka in a hospital bed. More Nike sleeping safely. Sada's quiet wisdom. He answered carefully. "He left me." The officer wrote it down. "But I survived." That sentence changed everything. Bode was taken for further questioning. Not arrested yet, but not free. Amaka's condition was still critical. Investigators were digging deeper. Company officials were reviewing old data. The village was beginning to whisper. Adekunle stood outside that night, looking at the road. The same road that led to the bush. The same road that led to the city. The same road that separated mercy from justice. He had power now. Influence. Authority. Voice. But the real question was no longer about survival. It was about what kind of man he would become. Will he push for full prosecution? Will he withdraw support from Amaka? Will Bode face prison or redemption? And most importantly, was the ambush truly just Bode's ego? Or was someone else behind the original robbery? Because investigators had uncovered something else. A second signal. A second communicator on that route. Meaning, Bode may not have acted alone. And if that is true, then the bush didn't just test friendship. It uncovered a network.